Yes, yes, I will. If I don't act, you're welcome to just say Thandi.
Forward, please.
Okay. So, but Kirk and Phil and Felix, right, sharing from your side.
Yeah, I've already tried to share my screen and it seemed to work okay, Thandi.
Okay.
Okay, Thandi, I just want to check mine too and see whether it will work for me.
Okay. Please, I've stopped sharing now. Pull up.
How they feel it? 5 minutes before we go live, just want to give you a...
Okay. Are you okay, Felix?
I think what Felix needs to do when he shares is to make sure his presentation is not in the background, and then when he clicks share screen, actually choose the presentation itself. He's chosen his desktop there or something like that.
Okay.
We are about 5 minutes before we have to go live.
Yeah.
While
we don't have it. We have it on the File Explorer.
Yeah, no, the best way is to have your presentation open in the background.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, then when you go into share screen,
go to Windows.
Then you'll see your presentation on one of those windows in that open window that opens up. Select the presentation itself.
When you go to share screen, you don't see your file. It's rather the File Explorer that appears with so many files instead of the PowerPoint file.
No, it should show you your PowerPoint if it's open in the background.
Yeah, the PowerPoint is open, but the entire File Explorer will pop up instead of that single PowerPoint file.
No, it shouldn't. Sorry.
Thandi, do you have?
I do. I can try. Let me share. I've got it ready. Share. Okay. First, I need to open it first. Felix, you can also try from your side. Just open it first and let it stay on your desktop, and then you share. Okay, I've got it here. Let me try again.
That should be busy. That means no. Okay.
I've got it here.
Problem.
Sorry, what did you say?
And then, is that okay?
Yeah, it looks okay.
Is it a doctor or not?
Can you tell us what to do so that we can share it from here?
What you do, you open your presentation and you keep it open on your desktop. And then you go to Zoom and share while it's on the desktop.
I tried that, but I wasn't.
Okay.
All right. So let's try it and see. Okay. Now you can stop sharing on your side and we try it here.
Okay, I have.
There's 2 minutes left.
Okay. While you are trying, let me just run through who I'm going to start with. Because I'm sharing for you, Zoto, I think we should start with Kirk because you're sharing and you've already tested. So I will just introduce the session and then do a little bit of opening remarks and then introduce the speakers and then hand over to you, Kirk. And Kirk, how do you pronounce your surname?
My surname is pronounced Semple.
Semple, okay.
Semple, yeah.
Sorry about that. And then I'll introduce you and then I'll introduce Zodwa. So it will be you, Kirk. Those joining us online, welcome to this session of the BioAfrica Digital Convention 2021, Advancing Africa's Biomanufacturing Value Chains Through Innovation. This is track 6 of day 2 on internationalization, partnerships, and collaboration sessions. And in this session, we are focusing on human resource development for Africa's manufacturing capability. My name is Thandi Mgwebi. I'm the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research, Innovation and Internationalization at Nelson Mandela University, and I will be the facilitator of this session. And with just a few housekeeping rules and how the format of this session will be, I will introduce the session and then later I will introduce my esteemed panelists. After that, we will have a discussion. The organizers will inform me if the chats are allowed. If not, you are welcome to send your questions to the organizers and those that are online, and we will take those questions. Just briefly, it is an important session in the sense that it's focusing on manufacturing for Africa. And it's well known among policymakers and scholars that a manufacturing sector is understood as a growth path, particularly for economic development. And we've seen in the African continent, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that was signed in March 2018, marking a milestone for the continent for market for goods and services in Africa. And this is a way of unlocking the potentials that are there for the manufacturing sector and to facilitate broadly industrialization in the continent. And we know that manufacturing has done well for healthy countries in terms of financial health, such as the United States, the UK, France, Japan, and Germany. Those are the world's wealthiest nations. But this seems to not be the case for the African continent, wherein there lies a lot of potential for manufacturing and industrialization. We do have hopes though, because there is business potential. Business to business spending in manufacturing in Africa is projected to be more than $600 billion by 2030. So it's a huge industry that cannot be ignored. And today's leaders are realizing that manufacturing is a major factor in helping Africa achieve our goals of the next stage of our economic development. But to be able to reach these goals, we need human capacity, we need capabilities, we need the right infrastructures, we need to be able to implement whatever policies there are in our various countries that are aimed at facilitating the manufacturing sector and to achieve the African Union's Agenda 2063. Manufacturing, incidentally, manufacturing has been put in the agenda of the Africa We Want, Africa 2063. So it is an important imperative for Africa's development. But I'm not here to make a presentation. I've got my esteemed leaders in the field who will be talking on the topic of human resource development. I start by introducing Professor Kirk Semple, a professor of environmental microbiology with over 30 years of research experience. Kirk is also the Director of International Engagement at Lancaster Environmental Center, Assistant Dean International, Faculty of Science and Technology, Director for the Recirculate and Actuate Projects Pollution in the Environment, particularly in soil. Professor Semple's research interests lie in bioenergy and the use of microorganisms for energy generation. Application of bioenergy residues as soil amendments or alternatives to conventional fertilizer. And secondly, I have Professor Zodwa Dlamini. Professor Dlamini is the Scientific Director of the South African Medical Research Council and University of Pretoria, Precision Prevention and Novel Drug Targets for HIV-associated cancers, extramural research unit. She is the inaugural Scientific Director of the Pan-African Cancer Research Institute at the University of Pretoria, and an honorary professor at the University of the Witwatersrand School of Clinical Medicine. She's also a C2 NRF rated scientist according to our national rating system. She's also a distinguished member of the Council for Scientific Advisors of the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, ICGEB. And then lastly, we've got Professor Felix Dakora, a former colleague of mine, is a plant biologist investigating plant symbiosis who has gained international recognition for his research. He is a South African research chair holder, the DST NRF Saatchi Chair Initiative in Agrochemy and Plant Symbiosis, a branch of applied chemistry concerned with preparing products from agricultural raw materials. I'm now going to hand over to Professor Kirk Semple to give his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So before I introduce, I'll just make sure that the technology works and try and share my screen. So I will go to presentation mode now. So can everyone see that?
Yes, we can see.
That's wonderful. Well, I'd just like to start by saying it's a real honor and privilege to be allowed to speak at this the Africa Bio conference. It's also, I'd just like to acknowledge the wonderful support from the organizing committee, and of course their very kind invitation to attend. And I'd also finally like to thank Dr. Nick Drager for actually nominating me to present here today. Well, it's wonderful to be here and to be able to speak. I won't introduce myself anymore because Thandi's done such a wonderful job. But what I would like to do is to give a short presentation on from a Lancaster University perspective and working with partners in Africa. So really, at the heart of what we do is collaboration. And one of my colleagues has coined this the art of collaboration. And what we like to think that we do is that we work equitably with our partners in African countries. And really, it's not just about working with partners that are in academia or at research institutes. We're also trying to bridge the gaps with the private sector, government and policy, and also civil society and the communities therein. I think that only by working in this sort of collegiate way can we really hope to address some of the very big and global challenges that we face today. What we attempt to do with our projects with African partners is to support new partner-based approaches to enable researchers to grow transformational impact through working with and in for their communities. And one of the mechanisms that we do this through is so-called eco-innovation. So eco-innovation is where we work with partners across all of the sectors to try to develop new products, processes, interventions and services that deliver benefits to both society and the environment. And one of the key tenets of this equitable partnership is developing projects and activities through co-design, co-development, and indeed co-delivery. So I just want to say that Lancaster University and the colleagues therein are absolutely committed to working in Africa. And at the moment, the university represents the only UK institution that has a physical campus in sub-Saharan Africa. And that's based at Accra in Ghana. And it's been running for 8 years now. It's delivering programs across a number of academic disciplines, mainly in the business sector, but also at undergraduate and postgraduate levels. But colleagues are moving to a new campus, which will be able to accommodate up to 1,400 students, which by African standards is tiny, but we are expanding into environmental science, engineering, and biological sciences. And the campus that we have in Accra has provided a fantastic hub, a base, if you will, which we can invite African colleagues to discuss research and other projects. Other projects that we're involved in. The second thing that we've done in relation to that collaboration with private sector policy and community policy sectors and community sectors is to set up with colleagues in Nigeria at the University of Benin, the Center for Global Eco-Innovation Nigeria. So this is our first international hub in sub-Saharan Africa that deals with global eco-innovation in a global way. And that is proving to be extremely productive and interesting to other partners. And from these two bases, we've been able to develop partnerships in East Africa, Southern Africa as well, beyond West Africa. So the two projects I really want to focus on, which are rather large projects, at least by Lancaster standards, are funded by the UK government under the Global Challenges Research Fund, where we look to take eco-innovation to develop these solutions to challenges within the circular economy paradigm. Particular focus is on waste and wastewater, sustainable energy, and the food security nexus. And this is only possible through multidisciplinary collaboration with African partners in research institutes, private sector organizations, and policy stakeholders. And it's only through this multidisciplinary, multi-sectoral partnership that we're hoping that we can drive real change that benefits both communities that we're working with, society, and environment. And a key component to these projects is not only the research, but of course is also capacity building and training across a broad range of stakeholders. And another focus is, of course, how do we extend the lifetime? How do we extend the outputs from these projects? And that's through think about developing entrepreneurial behavior, exploring ways that we can invest activities going forward, and hopefully ultimately come to a strong commercial standpoint. So, and those are really excellent ways of showing impact and driving change. So the Recirculate project is like the mothership. It's a large project, £7 million, lots of science and technology research going on there, lots of entrepreneurial thinking. But from that emerged the so-called Actuate project. And this is where we've taken that learning, that research, that capacity building, and actually constructed 2 demonstrators, one at a school in Accra in the region of Medina Zongo, and the other on the University of Benin campus in Benin City in Nigeria. And having these demonstrators is absolutely critical to showing people, stakeholders, that this actually works and works effectively. So how does it sort of look? Well, we're considering different elements within the waste, energy, food paradigm. We're using co-design, co-development to deliver a virtuous circular economy. We're looking at health and sanitation and how that feeds into bioenergy, and so it's this sustainable and clean energy. And then the waste from that can be used as a sustainable alternative to protect soils and grow crops without having to rely upon unsustainable inorganic nitrogen and phosphorus-based fertilizers. And all of these activities feed into the notion of business opportunity and entrepreneurial thinking that looks to bringing social and management science to explore how we can develop this in the African context, using eco-innovation systems that actually work. We also are very keen that, of course, we drive the economy, that it's accepted and embedded within communities that we're working with. And it's only through these levels of activity that we can actually try to ensure that all of the work around the circular economy is embraced by communities, by stakeholders, by organizations, to promote this going forward into the future. So I'd just like to finish off by thanking my colleagues in Ghana, the numerous colleagues in Ghana, Nigeria, in Kenya, Malawi, Zambia, Botswana, Angola, and Cameroon, who have all made contributions to the projects that I've talked about, and we're continuing to work forward into the future. So thank you very much, everyone, and I'll hand back to the chair. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Kirk. That's a very interesting project focusing on sustainability. But I'll reserve my comments and questions to the end. Thank you for that presentation. We're going to move on swiftly. You are right on time, actually. And we're going to now move on to Professor Zodwa Dlamini from the University of Pretoria. I will share the slides for you, Professor. Let me know if this is visible.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Mkwebi, and thank you for the kind introduction. I'll be talking about the new Cancer Institute at the University of Pretoria, the Pan-African Cancer Research Institute, which is a vehicle for human capacity development on its own. Tandy, can you go back a bit? Yes, so I wanted to say that at this stage, it's a very new institute, almost 2 years. but it has already shown progress in terms of supporting innovation by building human capacity in that area. Thank you. Go forward, please. As we may know, cancer is a leading leading cause of death worldwide, and accounting for nearly 10 million deaths in 2020. But also what we must realize is that in Africa, cancer registries are inadequate. So this number you are seeing might be way more than this. So Pakri is a center of excellence which is dedicated to cutting-edge integrated translational cancer research. Also, it involves prevention and clinical care. And it has a vision of accelerating discoveries, which are to prevent and cure cancer in the African region. So what it is all about actually is about mainly precision oncology. As we know, in Africa, we are very diverse genetically. And the drugs that are being used to treat cancer patients have been tested, or trials were done in the West. So being treated by those drugs is just trial and error, because it's just, if you are lucky, then it works. Then if you're unlucky, it doesn't work. And after some time, then we have to be changed to another drug, which you don't know if it's gonna work or not. So it's just a trial and error, because even in the West, I've talked to the directors of cancer centers in the US, and they will tell me that in any way, even the clinical trials in the West are not done in the African American. It's rarely done so we need to have clinical trials done here, so that we can have those drugs that are more effective, targeted to our genetic, which takes care of our genetic diversity. So Pakri is all about that. And its research addresses cancer health disparities also, and its impact on underserved and socioeconomically disadvantaged populations. It is backed by already a UN SDG-based Pakri Strategic Plan 2030 and its annual performance plan, which is there for implementation. So Pakri has got 3 macro areas which have subdivisions. We have clinical cancer research, translational cancer research, and the population and prevention cancer research. So all these areas, we already have projects that are ongoing for PhDs, and at the moment we have only 1 master's. So in all these areas, we already have projects that are ongoing. Can you move forward, please? So the Pakri Human Capacity Development Strategy actually involves mainly staff development, which can you move back, please? So currently we having our postgraduate being specialists, senior specialists, or physicians. We have 13 PhDs and 1 master's. These are linked to Steve Biko Academic Hospital, and also the site of the University of Pretoria. And the departments are, as mentioned, surgery, radiation oncology, neurosurgery, nuclear medicine, maxillofacial and oral surgery, community dentistry, anatomical pathology. The funding sources for these projects mainly come from the MRC, Discovery, and the National Research Foundation. What is a challenge here when you are building capacity? You need supervisory capacity. So what we've done at Pakri, we've really gone out there, both nationally and internationally, and appointed extraordinary professors that are co-supervisors for these projects and also students, because also by then they're doing technology transfer, since most of the technologies in this area, the cutting edge, are in the West. So we have to collect these and then they come and be part of our program, and by then assist in developing capacity development. We have locally universities with the MRC VETS, CSIR, CUT, and CPGR, which is in Cape Town. Internationally, we have almost all the major players in cutting edge technologies in cancer research. We also have extraordinary professors from the BRICS countries, which are also, which is India, Brazil, and China. In Africa, for now, we have partnered with Namibia, Mauritius, Seychelles, because those are countries that have high rate of cancer and communicable and non-communicable diseases, and also as well as Nigeria. Yeah, let's move ahead. The snapshot, I'm gonna give you the snapshot of capacity development projects in the cutting edge, which that's what we do. We have PhDs in the field of imaging genomics, or what is called radiogenomics, which is a cross-discipline that combines medical imaging like PET-CT with genomics. So this provides a favorable direction for clinical staging, prognosis, evaluation, and accurate treatment of tumors. Pakri's main departments that collaborate on this radiogenomics are nuclear medicine on breast, cervical, and prostate, and then neurosurgery on brain tumors. One of the examples of a PhD project is genome and PET-CT analysis in metastatic endocrine positive cancer in patients who have become resistant, who are on aromatase inhibitor therapy using liquid biopsy. Can you move ahead? So in terms of the partnerships, we, Pakri, even when it was initiated, it was initiated with partners. I had to travel all over the world to meet directors of cancer centers,
in progress
in cancer research, and also which are linked to the institutes of translational oncology, especially in the field of personalized immunotherapies. What is common in these three partnerships is they all run clinical trials. But being their partners now, it's gonna be possible that also we do clinical trials here in Africa and South Africa, so that we are able to really benefit from precision oncology. University of Nottingham also is one that we're working with, and we already working on an MSc course in cancer sciences that will equip students with the skills and knowledge, especially postgraduates, required to understand cancer from its basic principles through to its translation. So also we are starting a project on clinical trials for trialing the diagnostic. They have a diagnostic tool which also we're gonna trial here in South Africa for a start, and then it might also be trialed in other African countries. So this also will open the doors in terms of later on of biomanufacturing of those diagnostics which are going to be trialed here. So also, as well as the Sandra and Edward Meyer Cancer Center in Weill Cornell, what is interesting here is that also they are good in precision medicine advances and immune-based therapies. But in addition to that, they also look at nutrition, pain management, and psychosocial support. So that, because we can collaborate, we do collaborate extensively, but you find that there is something that is missing in another institution you collaborate with, which we can get easily by collaborating with another institution. Next, Andy. The challenge, there is a lot of challenges in this area because it's very costly to build capacity. Everything is expensive. Equipment is extremely expensive. Running costs also very costly. And major funding actually at the moment, although I said the cancer is one of the major killers in the world, even in the sub-Saharan Africa, but funding is just channeled to infectious diseases, especially locally. Also, it's difficult to get postdocs from Africa because you need reasonable funding for that. Well, NRF does provide funding, which is we really thank NRF for that. Yes, the main equipment for precision medicine, that precision oncology that actually we need is the NGS equipment, which is from Illumina, which is NovaSeq, a NovaSeq platform, because we also do liquid biopsies, and then they can only be done on this platform. It's really unaffordable. And then to drive translational research in cancer, especially precision oncology, is quite challenging. And this is a tool that will assist really to getting to improve or better patient care, because that will really enhance the field of precision oncology and targeted therapies. Also, without this, it's impossible to support and collaborate with our African and HD partners, which is Walter Sisulu, SMU, and University of Limpopo, as well as other African countries, because they also need. But with us getting this equipment, it will really go a long way, even to assist our partners. Most of the things of the research is just one-way trafficking, because, for instance, we have a trial that we are starting with data cancer genetics, that is focused, which is in India, and focused on innovation and research, which is based on early detection and diagnosis of cancer. So we're gonna trial this, but we have to send our samples to India, because at the moment we don't have those tools. If I might just say, the NGS Illumina Novasec is about 20 million rands. So the donation or more partners in this area will be appreciated. The last slide, Tandy. So I would like to acknowledge the South African Medical Research Council. Without it, I don't think this will have such a success at the early stages. The funding is by the way of the MRC unit, is SMRC Precision Oncology Research Unit. Tandy, it has changed from the previous, when you were reading our bios. It has changed to Precision Oncology. So it is funded. So by getting that funding, I'm able to, it's like a startup for Pakri, a startup funding. University of Pretoria, of course, they are, at the moment, they are busy constructing the laboratory, which state-of-the-art laboratory. And the National Research Foundation, of course, with the scholarships, but hopefully I've put in an application for the Sachi Chair DSI. I'm hoping for the best. The Department of Science and Innovation, of course, is also always very supportive, and the Department of Health. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Dlamini. I'm not gonna comment further because of time, and we will comment on it and ask for further clarifications wherever needed. And now I am going to hand over to Professor Felix Dakora from Tshwane University of Technology. Over to you, Felix. Let me just.
Thank you, Tandy. Maybe you can start sharing the talk. Thank you very much.
So, thank you. Let me do that. Over to you, Felix. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Well, when I was invited to make this presentation, I tried hard to make it align with the theme, and that's advancing Africa's biomanufacturing. And now I've tried to pull out some of the challenges that we face as academics trying to train the future generation of scientists for Africa. Let us go to the next slide. So this slide gives, a very quick summary of what the situation is in Sub-Saharan Africa in particular. That Sub-Saharan Africa produces less than 1% of global knowledge. And according to recent UN statistics, Africa must train at least 1 million PhDs per year if it's to enjoy the same quality of life as in the OECD countries. So one can then ask the question, skills-wise, does Africa have what it takes to advance biomanufacturing? Next slide, please. Now, the other issue about Africa is that we have historically trained all our scientists, researchers, and scholars abroad. And much of that is excellent. The last speaker, Zodwa, just talked about funding. So it's an easy route for people to get scholarships and study. And as at 2003, 2004, we had about 13,000 African students doing postgraduate programs in the UK alone. And I can assure you that At this point in time, we have just about the same number you get in China, masters and PhD students. Now, this approach has its own unintended consequences, in that sometimes the people that we train abroad acquire knowledge that's not relevant to the African research and innovation system. Also, overseas training becomes a conduit for migration of Africa's scientific workforce to the developed world. And up to about 30% of African scientists are lost to brain drain. Now, some people talk about brain gain. I'm not too sure I'm convinced by it, given the number of Africans I've seen abroad. But it gives you at least some feel of the statistics as to what's happening in the continent as an unintended consequence. Next slide, please. Now, so what is the alternative? The alternative to training overseas is actually to train the people locally in Africa. Obviously, what Kirk has presented, you can see massive collaboration, and so did Zodwa show that. It's important that we have some synergy in the way that we train students. Instead of them having full-time scholarships in Australia, Japan, China, or America, it's good to let them do something more or less like a sandwich, that they work with specific projects in the African continent, go there and do their research, and then come back. That way we have less chance of losing them. But while we are here, and I just want to share with you for 2 or 3 minutes, the kind of stuff that I do. Basically, as we heard from the introduction, my field is in biological nitrogen fixation, so I'm more into legume sciences, and we're there to generate green technologies for agriculture. Chemical fertilizers are good in the sense that they can push up the threshold of yields of crops, but they are also bad when it comes to the environment. They don't only pollute, they're also the cause of global warming. And so we have to find new greener technologies that can substitute these chemical fertilizers. In doing that, I have been extremely lucky, and I wish you good luck, Zodwa, for the Sachi chair. Well, I've had a Sachi chair for 15 years, and indeed, Tandy was here as a colleague and my boss, and she oversaw some of the things that we have done. And I can only say that as at 2019, this Sachi chair that I hold has trained 76 postgraduate students. Of the 76, 24 are PhDs and 52 are masters. But we still have a cohort of 8 PhD students in the lab and 4 master students. So hopefully when they complete, the number will actually go up. But these students that I'm talking about actually come from across a good part of Africa, especially the SADC region. But beyond that, I also had the privilege of winning a competitive grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And I was tasked to train 12 master students and 6 PhD students for 7 African countries. And that's Mali, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Uganda, and Tanzania. And of course, the host country, that's South Africa. So with contribution from the South African Research Foundation and also from Department of Science and Innovation now, we're able to up those numbers. So at the end of the day, the people that we actually trained from in the lab was bigger than that. It was bigger than the 12 masters and the 8 and the 6 PhDs. Now, but the major constraint to all of this, as again, my 2 colleagues have mentioned, especially Zodwa, is funding. And I just thought I will share this slide with you so that we can all appreciate the challenges. There are a couple of things I want to point out that irrespective of time, here you can see you have 1976 to 81. That's your first one, which is green, 1981 to 91, and 1991 to 2000. Now, if you look at that slide, you see that you have different regions: Sub-Saharan Africa, Asia and Pacific, Latin America and Caribbean, West Asia and North Africa, low and middle income, and a high income. Now, what is striking when you look at it is that the green, which represent 1976 to 1981, there was better funding globally for research. Okay? The second thing broader point to take home is that of all those graphs, Africa is the one that is the shortest. I mean, you can see that the rate of funding for agriculture has been very low compared to all the other regions. And the third point that's important to indicate is that there has been a general decline in R&D spending after 1981. And if you look at Africa in particular, you see that the funding is actually negative. In other words, our governments are not funding research. And it is almost impossible to be able to advance, biomanufacturing or any other manufacturing for that matter, with this level of scientific funding within the continent. And I think it's quite worrisome that we should be having negative spending in R&D. Let's go to the next slide. So underfunding then of R&D by national governments in Africa has contributed hugely to the lack of human capital on the continent, which is needed to advance Africa's biomanufacturing. Lack of human capacity is relevant for technology. In fact, especially if you're going to go into biomanufacturing and bioprocessing, which will be the outcome of food crops or other cash crops that have been produced. So the other issue that is really important is to mention the very low percentage of female scientists within the universities and national research councils. And so if we're going to have inclusivity in terms of manufacturing, it's an issue that must be addressed. Now, moving on, the next thing that's very threatening for what we do for a living is the unemployment of the youth. As you can see here, people are demonstrating and they're saying we are not lazy. They just want jobs. And what is worrisome to all of us, and I presume it must be to those in senior management of universities like Tandy, that we train people, they come out with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, PhD degrees, but they cannot get jobs. So because they can't get jobs, it now becomes a disincentive to which for many more students to want to go to the higher level in academia. And I don't know how we're going to address this, but it is life-threatening. And when you look at the so-called youth dividend in Africa, looking at 20, whatever you call it, 20, 50, thereabouts, when Africa would have been the most youthful continent, it already is, but it will be even much bigger by then, it's going to be catastrophic if there's no way of absorbing these youngsters into various skills through higher education, especially at the postgraduate level. Now, if you look at the statistics here, 60% of African population is under 25 years. Many of them are unemployed. In SA, about 46% of the youth are unemployed. So youth unemployment is actually bad for skills training. And going forward in terms of this advancing biomanufacturing, it's not going to happen if we don't address these issues right now across the entire country. Last slide, please. So Tandy asked us to indicate some call for action to advance manufacturing. Well, these are the 3 points that I thought I should share with you. That the member states of the African Union must start to fund R&D as a first step to advancing biomanufacturing in the continent. The second one is the youth employment. I can't, underscore that point, that unless African governments rise up to do something about youth unemployment, I think we are heading for total catastrophe. I would hate to predict that Africa will become more like what we saw recently here, when people were just going to shops and grabbing what they wanted. But if you're going to have a bunch of youth full of energy, but they have no jobs, this is what you can essentially predict is going to happen in the future. Then I also mentioned about the gender inclusivity. And if we're going to push on with biomanufacturing, then it's important that we do that along with gender equity, and that more females must be encouraged to take on to studies and skill themselves. So I just thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Tandy. And thanks to my colleague.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Dakora. We've got limited time. We've got 10 minutes for a discussion. I have not seen any questions so far, but I will start. Coming back to you, Kirk, about your project. You caught me there by talking about sustainability projects because they've got implications for entrepreneurship development in the continent. I just want to find out from you, how do you instill behavioral change? Because sustainable projects are not the obvious choice for many of our communities. And also, secondly, in partnering with businesses and industry, there are claims on sustainability practice that it may be good for the environment, good for Earth, but it may not be good for the bottom line. And what would be your advice, and also on scaling up initiatives for such projects?
So thanks for starting me off with such an easy couple of questions there. That's wonderful. I guess what I would say is that it's a, you know, in terms of this idea of I don't let's call it capacity building or educating people. I think it can't be monolithic in its thinking. It has to be there has to be a multi-dimensional approach. So, for example, within the projects that we've got running, and please bear in mind that we are absolutely working with local partners in country, and we very much look to them for guidance and advice because they clearly understand the environment much better than we do in Lancaster. Okay, and that's where this notion of co-design and co-development, I guess, comes through. So, you know, I think it's multi-dimensional. So, for example, we are looking at how we can educate, capacity build at the very earliest levels. So projects working in schools, okay, universities, okay, and we're actively doing that through these projects. And if you can, and particularly with schools, if you can bring in the families of the students and get them involved in that, there is a level of understanding, and that's where the way that you communicate and the language that you use becomes so important. I think the other thing is that, you know, when you move further away from school and university towards, you know, the private sector, towards policy and civil society, you approach it in different ways. And one of the ways that we've done this is by organizing lots of training workshops, face-to-face training workshops initially through the activities within the projects. And of course, then everybody's got a voice, which is really important as well. But COVID has really thrown up some significant challenges here, because as much as I love Africa, I haven't been to Africa in nearly 2 years now, and it's driving me insane. But because I love traveling to Africa and meeting people face to face. But what we have developed with our partners is online and digital mechanisms for communication and idea sharing and project development. Right. The idea of sustainability is a tricky one to sell. You're absolutely correct. But what we have to bear in mind is what I talked about, and Prof. Felix also mentioned the greater issue around climate change and global warming, is it doesn't matter who you are or where you are. This affects absolutely everyone. And it's very, very easy to show people firsthand how they're being impacted by this. Okay, and again, through communication and the appropriate use of language and example, you can begin to build understanding and capacity in there.
Yeah, right.
Does that answer your question? Or
it does. Thank you very much, Kirk. And I've got well, it's not a follow-up question on that. It's a related question that was raised by both Professor Dlamini and Dakora on, I guess, on capacity and human capacity, with regards to innovation and innovative projects like you have, Prof. Dlamini, like the precision oncology research. I've heard people talk about innovation bridges. Like, for example, at Nelson Mandela University, we've got this project that is led by a SACHI chair that has developed these innovation bridges between the continent and wealthier countries where there's this expensive equipment. I'm not sure if this is possible in oncology research because it involves health. I'm talking about ocean sciences, for example, where they build these connections so that expensive equipment can be accessed in where it is available. So it's a connection, say, between the French, connecting between the UK, connection and so on, but connecting the whole continent, in our case, the ocean, the West Indian Ocean. Is something like that possible in all disciplines?
I mean, again, that's a massive challenge. But what I would say is that we do have a sort of innovation bridge, and I sort of touched on that. I didn't describe it particularly well in this notion of the Centre for Global Eco-Innovation. Okay, so that since its inception in 2012, it's attracted £40 million in funding. And what it does is it links businesses with academic and research power or capability. So instead of the old traditional method of an academic coming up with a fantastic idea, really needing a company to come on board, which is certainly it's an older model. What we're doing here is actually saying, well, going to companies and say, well, what's your problem? What's your issue? You know, or it could be going to policy or community and say, what's your issue? And then addressing it with the academics. Now, the great thing about that that innovation bridge, if you like, is that the key foil for our example, at least, is the student. Okay, yes. The undergraduate or postgraduate student. And so the student gets access to not only their academic training, but also private sector or policy sector training as well. Yes. So in some ways that can help to address that issue of companies saying, well, these students are great, they've got their first class honours degree in whatever, but actually they're not fit for purpose. But by having that innovation bridge, you can address some of those issues.
Yes, Professor Dlamini, would you like to comment on this with specific reference to oncology research?
Yeah, I think what I can say, oncology research we are very backwards, if I can say, in Africa. It's even difficult to know where to start, except collaborating with the international partners to come and build capacity here. But the problem is it also, I think that this institute was started at a very wrong time during COVID. So at the moment it's difficult to get funded, but I'm hopeful that through the international partners, it will then bring the African community together, but it must come from the West. Pakri must partner with the West to be able to assist. Otherwise, from our side, it's one field which is very important, but and really underfunded, and very few people doing research in that area, not as many as in infectious diseases. I think it's funding, the research grows because it's funded.
Yeah. Prof. Dakora, in maybe 1.5 minutes before I go back to you, Professor Dlamini, one of the things that have been touted for developing full potential for Africa's human capital development is a focus on entrepreneurship and self-employment through business training at an early stage, skills upgrading, better promotion of science and technology, engineering, entrepreneurship, and mathematics, and also vocational and on-the-job trainings. What are your views with regards to agriculture?
That's a tough one. Look, it should be the easiest, let's be honest. I mean, agriculture is the mainstay of the African continent. I mean, it's a major employer across the continent. About 75 to 80% of the people live on agriculture. So really, I think redirecting our energy in terms of human capital development and making sure the students have a proper understanding of what farming is, just call it what it really is, what agriculture is very helpful. And I can say, when I started with this research chair, one of the things that I quickly did was to ensure that we work directly with farmers in the field. So we have worked in Eswatini, in Mozambique, in Ethiopia, in Ghana. We've worked with farmers in those places. And at the end of the day, actually, the students start to appreciate what farming can do for them when they have finished university. And they begin to see agriculture as an income earner rather than just food security per se. And so if they can take on that, and when they come out, my time was very different when I was trained. But their time now, I let them understand that it is important. And I can just say there's one of the students, amazingly around Easter, he brought me a goat. He's gone into livestock production. He did his project on pigeon pea, so he's now growing pigeon pea to feed goats and sheep as a business in the Pretoria North here. So he said, no, forget about it, Felix. I'm not interested in a job from ANC or from anybody. I think I'd rather use my knowledge that I learned in the lab to convert that into a livelihood. And I think it is doable, absolutely doable, and easier to do actually with agriculture than many of the other disciplines. Thank you.
Right. It's a pity that we do not have enough time, but in the future, I would like maybe outside this meeting, the conversation can continue, because I'd like to probe further, for example, education. How do we use education? There have been reports in The Economist that education in the continent is well on its way in developing human capital in the continent that will be beneficial for the continent. In the past 40 years, for example, although it has remained 20% lower than the global average, there have been entrepreneurs and managers who have been identified in Zimbabwe, Kenya, who have improved the standards in the manufacturing sector in those emerging markets. But that's something that we can talk about maybe outside this or in a further conversation, facilitated or non-facilitated. But we've really run out of time, and I'm sorry that I've been terrible in managing the time. But thank you very much for your insights. And we look forward to talking to you some other time. I'm really interested in your projects, in all your projects. I know Felix's one very well, but for you, Professor Dlamini and Kirk, it would be lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd welcome that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Tandy. Thank you, colleagues. It was lovely sharing the platform. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.